What's up, basketball fans? Welcome into NBA Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, as always, Jimmy Crowther, breaking down all the latest NBA news and NBA rumors, and we're going to give you some NBA free agency updates as well because training camp's right around the corner and the offseason is starting to slow down. But one thing that's not starting to slow down is the growth on this channel, and I need your help. We are this close. We are this close to 224,000 subscribers. So I need you guys to scroll on down and hit that big red subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed already, you're missing out on all the best NBA videos all day, every day. So please subscribe. Help us get to 224. The Boston Celtics and the Charlotte Hornets have finally figured out how to get Gordon Hayward out of Boston and into Charlotte. It is a sign and trade deal, something that we didn't think was going to happen. We all kind of expected Gordon Hayward just sign outright with the Charlotte Hornets, but then that didn't happen. So he agrees to the 4-year, $120 million deal. And then all of a sudden there's talk that it's a sign-and trade and that the the Hornets are potentially going to send something back to the Celtics, like a Cody Zeller. Maybe they'll include the Nicholas Batum contract. And then all of a sudden it was, no, it's just going to be a sign and trade with draft picks and a trade exception will be figured out, and that's what ended up happening. And so here's the exact trade. Here are all the details that you need to know about how Gordon Hayward became a Charlotte Hornet. So Hayward goes to the Hornets for not one, but 2 second-round picks, one in 2023 and one in 2024. No protections on those picks as far as I've seen. Meanwhile, the Boston Celtics receive a conditional second-round pick, which probably will not even go to the Boston Celtics because it's conditional, which means if this happens, then they'll get the pick, and a $28 million trade exception. Now, you kind of look at this and you're like, okay, why did the Celtics give up the player plus 2 picks and then basically not even get a pick back? What was that all about? Well, that trade exception, I'm going to break it down here more in just a minute, but I want you guys to make a prediction or tell me what you guys think. Who should the Celtics use that trade exception on? Because they can use it on anybody they want now for up to $28 million. That's a lot of good talent that they could acquire for $28 million. And if you don't know what a trade exception is, I'm going to explain it here in just a moment, so stay tuned. But while you're at it, if you do know what it is, go ahead and comment down below one player they should use it on before, really, the NBA trade deadline. Now, for the Hornets, this gives them really an established veteran in this starting five of some really, young talent. LaMelo Ball, arguably the Rookie of the Year favorite. I think they start Devontae Graham next to him, potentially Terry Rozier. I think you can make either one of those two guards a 6-man. Hayward is definitely starting at the 3. You go P.J. Washington at the 4. Cody Zeller for now is at the 5, but I could see Charlotte looking to move him before the deadline. They brought back Bismack Biyombo. They just signed Vernon Carey Jr. to a 4-year deal, which was actually pretty surprising. The most guaranteed money for any second-round pick this year. Cody Martin played some solid minutes for this team, 48 games played for the Hornets. He'll come off the bench. His brother Caleb Martin is also back there, but he's a little further down the rotation. Malik Monk is still a young and up-and-coming guy, and like I said, it can either be Terry Rozier or Devontae Graham, but you go back to what Boston did and why they did the sign and trade was because of that trade exception. It wasn't about the draft picks. They didn't care about the draft picks. What they cared about was making the biggest trade exception in NBA history. Now, how trade exceptions come to be, I still do not know because NBA cap is so freaking weird. But what I do know is that the Celtics have now created this trade exception, which allows them to trade for any player worth $28 million and not have to match that salary. And you're like, okay, break it down. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. Okay, so basically, if the Celtics traded for a guy that's making $15 million, they could just absorb him into their cap space. They wouldn't have to worry about sending back any kind of player worth $15 million. So let's say they do want to go out and get Miles Turner before the trade deadline. Guess what? They can do that by just sending away a draft pick, by sending away a rookie contract, by sending away, literally anything without having to worry about matching that salary. Or they could use it not just on one player, but multiple players. Let's say they went out and they traded for, 2 guys making $10 million and a guy making $8 million. They could do that and just eat that trade exception up. So, again, this trade had nothing to do with the picks. It had nothing to do with getting off of Gordon Hayward's salary. It had everything to do with creating that trade exception. And now they have that. Danny Ainge has that in his back pocket. And if you want to know what they end up doing with that trade exception or really what they do throughout the season, now that we're getting there with training camp coming up, you're going to want to make sure you subscribe to youtube.com/CelticsTV if you're a die-hard Celtics fan. If you're just a casual Celtics fan too, that's fine. If you're a casual NBA fan, guess what? We got videos for you as well. We're going to break down anything and all things Celtics at youtube.com/CelticsTV. Now, one more piece of news here for the Boston Celtics is that they have hired a new coach. No, they're not replacing Brad Stevens, but Evan Turner has signed on to be an assistant coach for the Boston Celtics alongside Brad Stevens. Now, interestingly enough, Evan Turner was still playing basketball just last year. I think his back problems really started to flare up, and he's really been hampered from that. So now he's turning to coaching, where he will help with the player development stuff in Boston. Remember, this guy was already with the Celtics for 2 years, in 2014 and 2016, and now he's joining Brad Stevens' staff as an assistant head coach. Nicholas Batum was waived by the Charlotte Hornets because he was getting paid way too much money, and now he's going over to the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, he has to clear waivers first, and he's basically already there. And when he does clear waivers, he will sign a minimum contract with the Los Angeles Clippers. This dude will basically get paid $27 million to sit at the end of the Clippers bench and come in when needed. Now, he hasn't been good for a while now. Ever since he signed that contract, it has been downhill for him. You know, the first year he was in Charlotte, it wasn't bad. He was averaging 15 points, 6 boards, and 6 assists. And, you know, he's kind of that triple-double kind of a guy that could get really – he was one of the guys that got 5, 5, 5, and 5 basically in one night. He could do that any night. And then the next year, his health declines a little bit. His points per game decline a little bit. The next year, he goes just off the freaking rails and averages 9 points per game. It was useless on that Charlotte team. And then this past year, he couldn't stay healthy, couldn't get any kind of minutes. He puts up 22. He plays 22 games this entire year. Now, if the Clippers even get, I would say even 2018-19 or 2017-18 version of Nicholas Batum, they add him to a pretty stacked list of additions that they've made throughout the offseason. Serge Ibaka was it was the best addition they could have made after losing Montrezl Harrell. They traded away Landry Shamet, but they got Luke Kennard back, which kind of a lateral move, but I think Luke Kennard's a better playmaker. They went and they signed Kai Bowman, who I think is an underrated guard that could be coming off their bench and really work his way into the rotation. Daniel Oturu was a great draft pick that they got in the second round. And Jay Scrubb is a guy that kind of took a flyer on in the NBA draft, and he could come in and compete for a spot as well, or just get some really solid minutes in the G League. But you know, with all these additions, do you think they're the favorite in the Western Conference, or is it somebody else? Is it still the Lakers? Is it now the Clippers? Is it the Nuggets? Is it the Dallas Mavericks? Is it the Golden State Warriors? Who is it? Let me know in the comment section, or if you're watching live with us right now in the live chat, tell me which team you think will win the Western Conference. And while you're doing that, I want to tell you about a deal that's happening right now at Fanatics at chatsports.com/NBA Monday. All this awesome gear, all NBA gear is up to 70% off. That means if you want to go out and get a $100 t-shirt or a pack of $100 t-shirts, you're going to get that 70% off all the way down to $30. I mean, come on. That is an incredible steal. Go pick something up today at chatsports.com/NBA Monday. That link is right here. It's also in the comments and in the description. With Christmas right around the corner, you got to get some gifts. Go get some today at chatsports.com/NBA Monday. 70% off all that gear. Go check them out today. Best place to get all your official NBA gear. Let's talk about James Harden, the guy that by now I thought he would have been traded, but he hasn't been yet. And it looks like he might be staying put until the NBA trade deadline rolls around or into the NBA season. Now, we know Harden requested a trade from Houston. We know that he's looking to move on, but there are reports coming out that they are more than content with keeping him on this roster until more deals come to the table. Now, Jerry Trotter went on a podcast, and he was basically talking about Brooklyn and James Harden and a deal potentially working out. This is what he had to say. Houston, from what I understand, is not in a rush to move him. I think they accept the fact that what's going to end up happening, and that being that he is going to get traded. They would love to bring as many teams to the table as they can to get the best deal. So that includes the Nets. That includes probably the Celtics kind of getting in on the mix. Obviously, other teams out there that want a piece of James Harden. But which team do you think he actually starts the season with? The season is less than a month away now. He's under contract with Houston, but he could go anywhere at this point. So where do you think he starts the season? Type HOU, think it's the Houston Rockets. Type BKN, think it's the Brooklyn Nets. Or if you have a totally different team, let me know who that is in the comment section. Now, as the offseason has progressed, I have continued to keep you updated on all the latest free agent signings, and we're going to do that right now with the ones. If you were tuned in on Friday, this is our update since then. We started, or ended, I should say, with DeAndre Bembry going to the Toronto Raptors from the Atlanta Hawks. MKG goes from the Dallas Mavericks to the New York Knicks on a one-year deal. Gerald Green gets another deal in his hometown team of the Houston Rockets on a one-year non-guaranteed deal. And, of course, Nicholas Batum probably going to sign a veteran's minimum contract, but we don't have the details quite yet. Thon Maker's going to the Cleveland Cavaliers, likely a training camp deal, but we're not sure, so TBD on that. Glenn Robinson gets a 1-year veterans minimum from the Kings. Justin Anderson, 2-year veteran minimum from the Philadelphia 76ers. And Tyler Johnson, who played with the Nets in the bubble, is now returning to the Nets on a 1-year veterans minimum deal. And then O'Shea Brissett, we don't know the money on this one, but it is a multi-year deal. I would assume it's a minimum with guarantees on the first year and not on those next couple of years, but he is going to the Toronto Raptors. So that is your NBA free agency update. There's still one big name left on the board in Anthony Davis, and when that happens, we're going to have it for you here on Chat Sports.